नमस्कार। Om Dhan Dhanvantaraye Namaha. On this occasion, auspicious occasion of Dhanvantari Jayanti, which has also been observed, which is also being observed as National Ayurveda Day, I welcome all of you on behalf of NIMHANS and especially from the Department of Integrative Medicine NIMHANS. Today, have with us a stalwart in Ayurveda research, Dr. Bhushan Patwardhan-ji, who is going to address us. I welcome all of you. Currently, now I would like to request Dr. Shivram Varamballi, who is the head of the Department of Integrative Medicine, NIMHANS, to welcome Dr. Bhushan Patwardhan-ji.
Namaste, sir. Very
Namaste.
happy to see you, although it is virtual. We have heard a lot about you from our Ayurveda colleagues and of course even from the research point of view. And we hope to emulate you in some of the research that you have been doing. And I believe Dr. Gangadhar also spoke to you today. He is unfortunately not able to join us due to an NMC commitment. But he was the person who led this movement here, which finally led to the establishment of the Department of Integrative Medicine, which I believe, other than a center like BHU, it's the first in any national institute in India. We hope that it will not be the last, and there will be several such institutions in the AIIMS and other institutes to go on. But it is a pleasure to have you, sir, and you have been an inspiration for all of us. The other inspiration for most of us has been Dr. Valiyathan, who spoke here last year on a seminar on mind-body medicine, and we were quite inspired by his words. So stalwarts like you have made us take this small baby step. And as a department, this is the first time we are celebrating the National Ayurveda Day, and it will be memorable, sir, thanks to you. We also did a small competition for our staff, basically the children of the students, based on the National Ayurveda Day. And we have received quite a number of entries. And we will be announcing the winners today. The prizes will be given in a ceremony later, because I think that virtual will not really give a good thing for the children. But we will announce the prizes today. So we have been, as you know, sir, we have started the department last October, and we have been running outpatient services till from the inception date itself. Inpatient, we have now created a special ward, and we are going to have Panchakarma also, which is going to start shortly. And we hope that this will be the first of many such stalwarts coming here, giving us their knowledge. And today we will like to start our program with somebody like you, who has been an inspiration to a lot of people. Kishore, I think we can go ahead. Maybe we can, at the end of the program, if sir is okay, we can have a brief discussion with any a couple of questions, which if sir is okay, he can answer. And then you can also possibly show the winning entries at the end of the program from the children. Go ahead, Kishore. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Shivram. Now we will to introduce Dr. Bhushan Patwardhan. Professor Bhushan Patwardhan is a biomedical scientist who is a fellow of National Academy of Sciences and National Academy of Medical Sciences, India. He is also chairman of academic board of NIPER Mohali, member of AICT Board of Pharmaceutical Sciences, and member of National Board of Examination. He worked as academic head of Manipal Group, Director Institute of Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine, Bengaluru. He was Vice Chancellor of Deemed University in Pune and visiting professor of Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, Shimla. He has worked on boards of several universities and member of important national committees of University Grants Commission, Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, Department of Science and Technology, DBT, CCRAS, ICMR, and so on. He has worked on several policy-making bodies and also has worked on task forces of National Knowledge Commission, Planning Commission, and Ministry of Ayush. He has made original contributions in evidence-based Ayurveda, especially in Ayurveda biology, ethnopharmacology, natural evidence-based Ayurveda, natural product drug development, and integrative approaches to improve public health system. His pioneering work on novel concepts such as therapeutic adjuvants, Ayusoft, Genomics, reverse pharmacology, network pharmacology are widely recognized. He is founder editor-in-chief of Journal of Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine, published by Elsevier, and he's on editorial boards of many reputed journals. He is a recipient of orations, including Sri Ramnath Chopra Oration, Waldemar Oration, and awards including Sri Ramnath Chopra Oration, Hafkins Oration, Dwarkanath Oration, Devi Oration, Kelly University Oration, and so on. The WHO Geneva awarded him a study on the role of traditional medicine in public health. His pioneering research on evidence-based Ayurveda is likely to have positive implications on future research in personalized medicine. His scholarly books, Integrative Approaches for Health and Innovative Approaches to Drug Discovery, both published by Elsevier, have received excellent reviews. He has received several research grants and has guided many postgraduate students. He has 2 US patents and over 8,100 citations. His worldview article on predatory journals published in Nature has been widely appreciated. We have Dr. Bhushan Patwardhan with us. It's an honor for us, sir. I request you to kindly take over, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Kishore Kumar, and thank you, Dr. Shivram, both of you. I am very happy to be here with all of you at NIMHANS, and as mentioned by Dr. Shivram, just in the morning I had discussions with Dr. Gangadhar. I hold him in great respect, and today I'm here to primarily appreciate efforts which have been taken at NIMHANS under his leadership with all of you to establish probably country's first integrative medicine department in an institute of national importance like NIMHANS. This is very forward-looking step, I would say, because in India, institutes like NIMHANS are leaders and others follow what they do. So starting this initiative in institutes like NIMHANS speaks a lot. And I know that it is not easy to do such job. In India, very, very strangely, even in India today, talking about our own culture, our own heritage, our own knowledge system was considered practically as crime until Prime Minister Narendra Modi came very boldly and started talking about Naya Bharat, the new India he talked about. I also personally hesitate using term India nowadays, because when we use term India, we look at India which was under British regime, we look at India after independence, but India is not after 1947. Bharat has tradition of thousands of years, and connecting to just few years of experiences is not really doing any justice. Every country in the world takes pride in their own culture, in their own heritage, in their own tradition. And I don't know why this kind of a monocultural dominance, which was put on us deliberately, primarily by the British rulers to serve their purpose of East India Company's economic interests, and so that made India from world's largest economy until 1700, to practically the lowest in many respects, because all our art, our culture, our knowledge, was destroyed, and the same narrative unfortunately continued even after independence for many years. So it took 70 years, to get yoga international recognition. So I really first would like to appreciate our Prime Minister's vision and very strong support, which gave us not only the Atmanirbhar Bharat as a vision, but I think for Atmanirbhar Bharat, we also need Atma Sanman, and he helped us to regain that Atma Sanman. Today we feel proud of talking about yoga. Today we feel proud of talking Ayurveda, you know. And when the world was accepting and adopting these traditions in our own country, they were put to sit in corner, you know. And now the things have changed rapidly, and the efforts what Nimans has done, I think, will further accelerate this process. You know, because it is about all leadership, you know, the way in which the leadership puts forward the thoughts, people will carry forward. The earlier narrative was monocultural dominance, which was essentially the Western philosophy dominance, you know. So we used to talk about maybe Newton and Galileo more, undermining our own Panini and Kanad, or if frankly, if you ask me to list top 10 books in the world, you know, I would put Patanjali first in it. I feel in India, teaching psychology for undergraduate program or for MA psychology graduate program and not even discussing Patanjali is a great crime. Patanjali, without Patanjali, psychology or even to that matter psychiatry cannot be complete. And this is true for many other knowledge systems in India. This is true for economics. If you don't learn Kautilya Arthashastra, you know, your knowledge of economics is not complete. Modern economics is good, you know. The scientific temper and scientific outlook we must take further, but at the, not at the cost of our own culture and our own knowledge system, because science is dynamic. It keeps on changing. It is not static. And therefore, Charaka also said the same thing, you know, that we have to accept knowledge from all branches. And that's how the integration roots have been there in Ayurveda right from the beginning. But what happened in between is the responsibility of protecting knowledge was more on yogis and Vaidyas or Hakims or Siddhas. The responsibility of protecting knowledge was so strong, and survival itself was so challenging, that doing research was far-fetched. And there was no Rajashray to do all these things. So over years, over centuries, the research in our systems has suffered. And now Dr. Shivram and Dr. Pramod Kumar, the work what you are doing there under the supervision, leadership of Dr. Gangadhar, and why I give value to that is you're not compromising the rigor of science in any way. You're not taking a dogmatic view, you know, saying that what Patanjali has said or what Charaka said is the last line. No, we are all open, and that openness has been taught by Patanjali and Charaka themselves. We are not adding ourselves anything. So they have told us to go on adding, you know, Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Bhunatu. These Vedic messages also tell us the same thing. So we are not telling something different, or we are not taking any different path. So integration, actually what we talk about, has been in our roots for long. For some reasons, because of the challenging environments, the hostile environment, I would say, not only challenging environment, hostile environments, you know, we had to lose that track of that. And then the Macaulay strategy of killing our own languages, killing our own culture, killing our own knowledge system systematically through education, you know, was so powerful that even today, the Macaulay's grandchildren pose as more committed to those thoughts than even Macaulay's children. Because Macaulay's children had opportunity to interact with those who helped us to liberate. The nationalist movement, they could see, they could witness, you know. But the grandchildren and grandchildren had no opportunity to do so. They grew with luxury of independence, and so they grew with the same kind of a narrative. Why I gave this broad overview is to tell you that integrative medicine, what we talk about, actually Ayurveda and yoga are integrative medicine. Integrative medicine, we cannot look at something which is different coming from sky. No, integrative medicine is in our roots. We are just trying to revisit that. We are trying to re-establish that, revitalize that, regain those strengths within us, which are there. And I think now the situation and environment is very conducive, very, very conducive. With the work which Dr. H.R. Nagendra has done, establishing S. Vyasa as independent university for yoga, I think it was a very bold step. And look at a person who is a engineer, outstanding engineer, coming out from a top institute like Indian Institute of Science, who has worked with NASA and other top institutions. He took it as a mission. He took it as a mission and established that against all odds. Let me tell you that, and many of you may know, but I have seen him growing, struggling, when the environment was not conducive. Today, the environment is conducive, but when he started, it was not easy, So he did that magic. He got support. He convinced our own political leaders like Narendra Modi himself, and the change happened. Many like Dr. Gangadhar here in yoga, or another Gangadharan who is there in Bangalore, several of such. Late Krishna Kumar ji also, I would like to remember him on this occasion, or even for that matter, Mahesh Yogi ji. All these people, and thousands of names I can take, but this is not the time to take names. This is time to carry forward their legacy and their thoughts further. And that's what the work you are doing at NIMHANS. And therefore, I wanted to come here to congratulate you, to appreciate your efforts, in what you are doing. And I must tell you that Ayurveda and yoga, and I have been talking about it now, and I will talk about it more aggressively onwards, and I want you to join that mission. I'm also writing on this, and the point what I'm trying to make here is when we talk about research, and as you know, everybody starts criticizing what research you are doing in Ayush. My counter question to them is what research you have done on Ayush. Because it is a wrong question. Asking a question to a yogi or to a Vaidya or to a Hakim or to Siddha, what research they are doing is a wrong question. It is a humiliating question you are asking them, demoralizing them. We should stop this. We should not accept this kind of a question. This question should be asked to our own scientists, because doing research is primary responsibility of scientists. And I think that the national institutes, especially the institutes which are run on public money, be them IITs, IIMs, AIIMS, NIMHANS, or central universities, or national laboratories, all of them, their fiduciary responsibility is there to do research on Indian knowledge system. We must ask this question very boldly to them, what research you have done. We don't want research only to happen on yoga in Cambridge and Harvard, We want research on yoga to happen in top of the top institutes in India. And modern medicine people, those who are asking question to Ayush, what research you have done, I come from modern science background. So for me, modern medicine, be it allopathy or Ayurveda or yoga or naturopathy or Unani or Siddha or Soarikpa, all of them are at equidistance. And I must tell you that modern science is not a monopoly of modern medicine. At one time, Greek medicine was traditional Greek medicine. Greek medicine transmuted into modern medicine because they went along with modern science. We were not allowed to do so. We were suppressed. We missed our brush with the Industrial Revolution. We were kept away completely. We were kept away from all the developments in science and technology. We were quarantined, actually, at that time. Ayurveda, yoga, and Indian knowledge systems were quarantined. Not only quarantined, suppressed, exploited, destructed, destroyed. And still, the power of knowledge is so much that nobody can destroy knowledge. It emerges out. It sprouts again back. That's what you are doing. The work what you are doing is replanting those seeds. We have preserved, our scholars, our pandits had preserved those seeds of knowledge in those adverse conditions. Now it is not only responsibility of Nimans. You have started that, or it is not just responsibility of S. Vyasa. They have started that. I would say that every Indian scientist should commit in their own discipline to do something for Indian knowledge system. I think if we do that, Bharat will become Vishwaguru. What Prime Minister wants, Bharat will become Vishwaguru in research also. Because what kind of research we have been doing otherwise, Mostly we have been engaged in Me Too research. What kind of impact Indian research has done on world? This question we should ask boldly to our own. We are working in science, we are doing research. These questions I am addressing to myself, not to anybody else. I'm not criticizing anybody. I'm saying that more and more national institutes come forward to do more and more research in our own systems. The way towards Vishwaguru, the way towards Atmanirbhar Bharat will be more easier. And in doing so, we will be doing great justice to ourselves because we will be getting leadership in science, which we have not been able to do. You look at the 5-year Nobel Prizes given starting from 2015, which was given to UU2 for artemisinin. 2 other Nobel Prizes every year, one Nobel Prize for autophagy or one Nobel Prize for immune biology. All this, what do they speak? If you look at it, if our scientists would have started working on those, if our scientists would have started working on the science behind fasting, maybe autophagy Nobel Prize they would have won. If our scientists would have started looking at concept of Prakriti so strongly and given full thrust to that, maybe the chronobiology or the Nobel Prize which went for the concept of biological clock, would have come to India. So anyway, whatever has been lost, and this is what Dr. Valia also endorses. The Ayurvedic biology, what Dr. Valia came out with was precisely on the same hypothesis, that there are knowledge gems in Indian knowledge systems, Let's look at them with scientific view. And scientific temper, we don't want to see. The people cannot go on telling that we don't want to get into science. No, that also will another extreme view. And science also cannot say that what we know today is the only science, because science is changing. At one point of time, modern medicine was not ready to believe that the same medicine cannot be given to different people. They used to believe that aspirin 500 milligram, if we give, everybody will be cured with headache. Today, we know that it doesn't happen that way. The approach of personalized medicine which has come today primarily came because of cancer research. For the first time, cancer research identified that there are 3 clear-cut genetic subtypes, and you may need different medicines for these genetic subtypes. And from then, the whole knowledge, whole branch of pharmacogenomics emerged. Now, even before pharmacogenomics, pharmaco-Ayurvedic genomics would have emerged if we would have looked at seriously to that. Today, Ayurgenomics has become a major field. I remember when I hypothesized about genomics in 2000 by writing a review wherein I said that Ayurveda is a personalized medicine. No, people were not ready to look at it seriously. The Human Genome Project was just emerging at that time. Epigenetics was not even on horizon. And then we did our work on rheumatoid arthritis patients in our own cohort, and we showed that HLA-DRB1 gene polymorphism, the allele distribution is statistically different. That was the first time the solid scientific evidence came in support of traditional concepts. And a similar kind of work on the other side, Dr. Gangadharan was doing to understand the yogic classification of prakritis, the types, the gunas classification. I remember that because we both of us have been interacting since that time, and we have both have been citing our own work. And today Ayush Genomics has become a 100 crore project for CSIR. Many institutes like IGIB are doing excellent work in it, and many others have joined this effort of doing Ayush Genomics work. So there are several concepts, concept of prana, concept of chakra, concept of Agni, concept of consciousness, dhyana. I can go on and on and on. Who will do work in this? Should we look only at, and I had a long interaction with a team of scientists from Harvard. I visited Mind Body Medicine Institute. I had one-to-one interaction with Professor Benson. And Professor Benson did a lot of work on Buddhists, meditators, who will do work on Indian yogis? Who will do, now we know for sure that meditation has definite effect, positive effect on mind. And not only mind, on brain. And Dr. Shivram, you come from Nimans, so I need not tell you this, but I want to tell that see, we made a biggest mistake by separating psychology from psychiatry. The mental health, I want to ask this question. You are sitting in Nimans. I want to ask a question. Will Nimans will be able to answer this question that what is mind? You are talking about mental health without understanding what is mind. Or maybe people are understanding, people like you may understand what is mind, but science is not accepting even reality. That is what is my problem, and this is the leadership India can give to the world. We have to take these issues on priority, on high impact research. And we should not look at any resources here, We should be very liberal in giving researches for robust research in yoga when it comes to understanding mind-body, or when it comes to understanding immunology or psychoneuroimmunology or psychoneuroimmune endocrinology, whatever you want to call it. These are the cutting-edge areas. These are the cutting-edge areas. Psychology and psychiatry, separating them out and looking in a myopic view, people started believing that by managing brain, you will be able to manage mind. It is absurd. Modern psychiatry talk about stimulants and suppressants, primarily. Primarily, look at it, what is the core of modern psychiatric treatment? So if you are depressed, you give stimulant. If you are so this is not the way. You cannot manage mind by just managing brain. In acute condition, modern psychiatry is fantastic and we must use that. But for long term, the mind, managing mind, you need not material as medicine, but meditation as medicine will be a great tool to do this. I'm going to end now and I'm going to open it for discussion. Today I did not come prepared. I did not use any PowerPoint. I did not prepare my talk, and I wanted to talk extempo what I feel right now. And that's what I have done. I will end my talk by reading a paragraph from one of my heroes. And my hero is not a man. My hero is a woman. and her name is Candace Pert. And I'm reading a paragraph from her book, Molecules of Emotion. And this is page number 190 from Molecules of Emotion. Now she writes, and I'm connecting it with COVID-19 situation now, She writes, viruses use the same receptor as neuropeptides to enter into cell, and depending on how much of the natural peptides of a particular receptor is around and available to bind, the virus that fits that receptor will have an easier or harder time getting into the cell. So easier or harder time will depend on this kind of an environment. Because the molecules of emotions are involved in the process of virus entering the cell, it seems logical to assume that the state of our emotions will affect whether or not we succumb to viral infection. This might explain why one person will get sicker from the same loading dose of a virus than another person. I don't know about you, but I never get sick when I am about to go sick. Could an elevated mood, one of the happy expectation and a hope for an exciting possibility of adventure protect against certain viruses? And a question mark she is putting there. One possible explanation for how this might work is that the reovirus, which she is taking as an example, shown to be a cause of viral cold, uses the receptor of norepinephrine, an informational substance thought to flow in happy state of mind according to the main psychopharmacological theories. This is important to enter the cell. Presumably, what happens is that when you are happy, the reovirus can't enter the cell because the norepinephrine blocks all the potential virus receptors. Now I'm going to stop and ask you the question, what will happen if you are happy, or if you are meditating, or if your status of mind is full with happy chemicals or happy hormones? Will you get protection against COVID-19 or not? Simple question, And what are you talking about, Giving medicines which are proven to be unsafe and proven to be ineffective, giving them as prophylaxis to Indian people? I think we have been creating a major fraud on science by doing all this, by ignoring our own sciences, and by adopting something which is not even proven in science itself, giving people medicine which are not safe, which have been proven now by WHO in their own solidarity trial that they are not effective. What are we doing? Over the background, the work which all of you are doing at your Integrative Medicine Center in Nimans is exemplary. I hope that more and more institutions come forward to take and learn from this model, add on and design their own models, because there cannot be one uniform model for India. Everybody will have to evolve their own model of integrative medicine. I hope the process gets triggered off with effort started with Nimans. I wish you all the best, and kudos to you, Kishore Kumar, as well as Shivram and all your colleagues, especially Dr. Gangadharan. All the best to you. Namaskar. Dhanvantari may bless all of us.
Thank you, sir, for your very inspiring talk today. The session now is currently open for discussion. I would request Shivram sir to start.
Thank you, Dr. Patwardhan. And I think he have hit the nail on the head. Especially in the COVID has been an eye-opener for many of us, where it has literally been like the blind man and the elephant story, that each person says this is effective and that is effective. So many drugs have been used which are quite dangerous and with not efficacy not substantiated. In fact, there was a recent hullabaloo about the Indian Medical Association asking Dr. Harshvardhan you know, how many of your ministers have taken Ayush, and I actually wanted to ask the reverse question: how many of the allopathic doctors have not taken a single Kashaya or a Pranayama or a Jalaneti or whatever it is? And you know, the answer would be very similar. So there is a very important distinction that you have made, sir, that science is same. Science cannot be different for Ayush, and science cannot be different for allopathy. Science is the same. So as long as we remember that the science is the same, everything needs to be investigated to be offered as a professional treatment, then we are on the right track. Denigrating something just because it is ancient is ridiculous. You know, that is what is unfortunately happening, that the moment anybody talks about something which is 2000 years old, unless it is religious. If it is religious, everybody doesn't talk about it because it will become you know, a fight. But when something else is talked about, that this has been in evidence, this was brought to us very much when a couple of years, not a couple of years back, 4 or 5 years back, a Brazilian delegation visited NIMHANS. We were surprised because we didn't know why they came, and they had looked at our yoga publications and themselves had come. By their own money, they had somehow got funds to come, and they wanted to look at our yoga center here. At that time, the Ayurveda was a CCRA's unit was here, of course, but NIMHANS did not have. And what they came and told us is that in their University of Sao Paulo in Brazil, they have created a system where all medical students between the 2nd and 3rd year, they are sent for a Ayurveda and yoga retreat. So I asked them, why did you do it at that time? They said, sir, what we observed is that when the students start medicine in the first year, they are very idealistic. They want to improve the lot of society. They want to do treatment for the poor. They have a lot of good ideas. But towards the 3rd and 4th year, what we observe is that they get into this rut of which specialty will get me more money, which specialty will make me go abroad, which specialty, you know, would bring me more fame. And they said we need to intervene before the 3rd year. And we thought the best intervention was yoga and Ayurveda and teaching them about holistic medicine and healing patients rather than treating diseases. So they have a full yoga and Ayurveda, almost like a retreat, Panchakarma, everything is there. And I was, like you said, I was wonderstruck that we are not doing it in our medical class. A very disastrous kind of policy that we are following, that science is different for you and science is different for the Ayush people. It's a very sad thing. And as Dr. Malla Bhaskar Rao is the professor of neurosurgery at NIMHANS, is pointing out in the chat box, China has fully backed their traditional medicine system. The national backing, which to some extent we are getting now, has been in existence for almost 30-40 years in China. And therefore, if you look at many of their research, they are far ahead of us. The only thing they have maybe have a disadvantage is the lack of English education in China. Otherwise, all the journals in the world would have been full of Chinese literature now in terms of medicine. They have fully backed their system. Statistics say that 30 to 40% of patients in China are treated with traditional Chinese medicine for any disorder before they look at conventional medicine. I am also trained in conventional medicine, biomedicine if you want to call it, and I have great faith in it, like you said, for emergency conditions, also for more severe illnesses. But at the beginning and in the chronic stage, I think we need to look beyond just neurotransmitters or, you know, treating the symptoms. We need to treat the root cause, which only systems like Ayurveda and yoga can do. So I entirely agree with you, sir. We need to sort of make this we cannot say that only I will do this research. Like you said, it's very important. This is in the recent Vaibhav summit. There was a summit called Vaibhav, which is organized by the DRDO under directions from the PMO. It was a series of collaborative talks between Indian scientists and scientists of Indian origin living abroad. we had made a very strong recommendation about two things. One is that all medical colleges in India should have a unit of Ayurveda and Yoga. Number two, the mainline funding agencies, the mainstream funding agencies need to, the moment now what is happening, if we write a study on Ayurveda to ICMR says you send it to Ayush. So by making this Ministry of Ayush, they have actually segregated Ayurveda and Yoga and pushed it out of the mainstream. It is almost like a reservation system which is bound to fail and make the people in that not capable of competing. That is the system we have now in India. We are reserved category in terms of research, which I think is a disaster. It has to be in the mainstream. So these are the two strong recommendations that we have made. And then only people will get into it if ICMR, if, for example, I have a DBT Welcome India Alliance grant on yoga and schizophrenia. And because it is a Welcome Trust and DBT has partnered with it, they are quite open. They have, of course, it's not that many people are applying, that people don't know yet, but I'm sure it will happen that in the future we will have more grants like that, and maybe then we can really take up the research that you are talking about, Dr. Patwardhan. Thank you very much. I think we have learned a lot from your talk, and like I said, yourself and Valiyathan are the people that we need to look up to when we do this kind of research.
No, very, very valid comments and addition what you have done, Dr. Shivram. And I have written recently editorial in JIM, in which I have said that there is a time now, actually it's overdue, that we need to transit from pathy-based approach to people-centered holistic healthcare. Today we are in pathy-based. So if you are allopath, I will see what allopathy can do. And it becomes then war of turf. And patient is not seen in between, So patient becomes extremely gullible from all the sides. And unfortunately, today biomedicine is becoming too mechanistic. It is becoming too pathology oriented, and we undermine the physiology behind it. The physiology is first, and yoga talks about physiology. So this is very important. Non-pharmacological interventions, especially for mental disorders or for chronic diseases, non-communicable diseases, non-pharmacological interventions are equally important. Lifestyle diseases cannot be managed only with pharmacological interventions, and modern research also tells us the same. There are several systematic reviews which tell us that diabetes cannot be managed only with drugs. Diabetes management requires lifestyle management. Diabetes management requires diet management, nutrition management. Diabetes requires lifestyle management, behavioral management. So all that will come from Ayurveda and Yoga. So Ayurveda and Yoga support for diabetes is essential. So as biomedicine practitioner also, or allopathic practitioner also, you must get those insights. And therefore, we are proposing that at undergraduate level, every Indian doctor must have certain minimum skill sets. If you want to call yourself as a doctor, then certain minimum skill sets you must have them. Every doctor must be able to manage family care first. Whatever is required to take care of family medicine must be there. Then primary health care or emergency care, what you talked about, must, every doctor. Because Ayurveda doctor cannot sit idle if somebody comes there with anaphylactic shock. No, they cannot. Or if somebody comes with snake bite, they cannot just go on doing some traditional medicine jadi buti there. There may be some claims, but they cannot take those risks there. So they must be equipped with those skills. At the same time, allopathic practitioners, when diabetes person comes to them, they just cannot give him insulin or metformin, No, they will have to tell them what changes in diet and lifestyle they will have to do, how meditation can help them, how mental state actually affects the endocrinology. And diabetes management requires all this. So these skills should be there so I'm saying that there are certain minimum skill sets required, which every medical doctor, irrespective of pathy, should have that. And that we are now trying to get into the mainstream. Once that happens, automatically that integration will happen at the higher level. Because Dr. Shivram, we are trying integration from top down, and that is our problem. Because by the time, now you may have your own background, your own family upbringing, your own environment that has made you open to look at other systems. But most of the medical schools will create doctors in such a way that they will only have a myopic view, they will only know biomedicine, they will only know allopathy, and their minds will not be open because the education is that. And fortunately now national education policy done by Dr. Kasturirangan gives us this tremendous opportunity to make major change in medical education also. So I hope, and at Niti Aayog, Dr. Gangadhar is part of our group now. He is also part. Niti Aayog has appointed this committee, and this committee is looking at the integrative health system, to come up with. And I am now posting in my chat box, a link to the editorial, and I'm asking actually this question to all those who are in the. There are 55 participants now. So my request to each one of you is I'm asking a question that should we move from pathy-based approach to people-centric holistic healthcare? And you should really give answer in yes, no in the chat box. So this will be used as a data for our existing exercise. And I'm just give me a second. I will put it in. So this question in a chat box, let's see, should we move from pathy-based approach to people-centered holistic healthcare? Question mark. I would appreciate your, if you don't want to give yes or no, you can also give no comments, I have no problem with that. And you can disagree also. And I'm also giving in the same question a link to the editorial, which you can read later. But I want now your spontaneous answer to this question. Should we move from pathy-based approach to people-centered holistic health? The question is in your chat box.
Definitely, sir. I think there is no doubt about it. In fact, in many cases, our patients have taught us this. Because sitting in the psychiatry OPD in NIMHANS, when we were residents and we were senior residents, we used to say, okay, you have got this illness, you have to take this medicine. And the patient would ask, in addition, sir, is there anything I should not eat? Is there anything I should not do? And we said, no, there is no such thing, you can do whatever you want. And then at the end of the day, I would think, I mean, what should I advise this person? I have no idea at all. So they know more than us. I mean, it is not a one-way street. Medicine is never a one-way street. So we should learn from our patients. So as far as we can, what we are following here, sir, in our own OPD is that when we see a patient in detail, the three physicians from the three systems of medicine. So we have assistant professor of psychiatry, we have assistant professor of Ayurveda, that is Kishore, and we have assistant professor of yoga, that is Dr. Hemant Bhargav. They sit together. Because I have seen this so-called integrative system in many private setups, which is just co-location. And the biomedicine person sees and says, there is a yoga person next door, there is an Ayurveda person, and the patient has to go to three people. Why will he go? No, nobody will go, and you don't know what the yoga person is telling about the Ayurveda medicine. You don't know what the Ayurveda person is telling about the allopathic medicine. This cannot work, sir. Okay. Now there has been a question saying that this kind of thing cannot work in the community. So what we should think is that the person who is trained in such a system will become the doctor that you are talking about. If he spends 3 years in a setup where every day all 3 interventions are being done, he would be confident enough to say, okay, you have psychosis, you should take risperidone. You can also take this herb and you should do this yoga module every day. Now that is what we need to come out, and if it happens at MBBS level, I'm even more gratified. But at least in MD, our dream is, sir, that we should reach the stage of having an integrated MD in psychiatry, which would be open for both graduates in modern medicine as well as Ayurveda and the other streams. That is what we are working towards.
No, you are absolutely right. This is how it should be. MD and psychiatry, everybody should be eligible. In
Yes.
competition, who will succeed, that is a different matter, but everybody should be eligible for that. And the same is MD in Swasthavritta, everybody should be eligible. So if you, after passing MBBS, want to do MD in Swasthavritta, you should be able to do that.
Absolutely.
So this kind of a cross exchange of knowledge, why we should stop that? Nowhere. Why we should stop somebody with MBBS doing MD in Ayurveda or vice versa? There is no reason. And I think this, I feel that there is a growing consensus in our country that basic medical education, basic medical education should contain whatever is required by the people. And I think there are 4 important things which are required by the people in India. I'm talking about. Every country may have different priorities, but only 4 things, and you may add also. And these 4 things should be addressed by every medical doctor in the country. One is family medicine. Second is primary care. Third is prevention, in which determinants of health will come, social determinants of health will come, in which nutrition will come, lifestyle will come, genetics will come, environment will come. All these are important determinants of health. So determinants of health will come. And lastly, public health. So these 4 skill sets, every medical doctor must have. And no pathy can give all the 4. If family medicine or primary healthcare can be best given by allopathy, the prevention may be best given by yoga and Ayurveda or other systems. So we have to make this very, very strong and open, and later at postgraduate level, specializations can come in. So, and for doing specialization, once this basic medical doctor is ready, you should not stop that person from specializing in any knowledge field. In any competition and test, you can have all entrance tests, you can have your own requirements, but you cannot just bar merely based on their qualification. That is what is the problem. Just because you are MBBS, you are not able to do MD in Ayurveda. No, this should not be, and vice versa. If you are BAMS and you want to do MS in general surgery, now why surgery is a technique? Why it should be monopoly? Or MD in radiology, radiology is a technique. Why it should be monopolized? Everybody in medical domain who wants to excel in it should be given opportunity. They may not get selected, They may have to work hard to get selected. That is okay. But why? You cannot stop them. Today we are stopping them,
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, sir.
Yes, Kishore. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Sir, in brief, if you can say, there is a lot of confusion on Ayush interventions in COVID-19. Somehow the evidence on this has not been sufficient. And then for the protocols that are coming from the ministry or from the Ayush side, there are a lot of questions which we need to answer and so on. So what is your message here, sir?
My message is COVID-19 has brought everybody on the same level playing field. Nobody can claim, including biomedicine, nobody can claim that we have evidence. And because everybody, COVID-19 is new for everybody. So the understanding or pathophysiology of understanding of COVID is common to everyone. It is true in case of biomedicine, it is true in case of Ayurveda. And let's look at what that it is. How disease progresses. In phase 1, when there is incubation, it affects immune homeostasis. It alters regulatory cytokine levels. That's the beginning. Then it progresses slowly to suppressed Th1 response. It can lead to lymphocytopenia. It can lead to low macrophage function. Once it progresses further, it goes into phase 2, which is inflammatory phase, in which you experience cytokine storm. And this is the most critical phase, most difficult phase to handle. Next stage is tissue damage. Because of cytokine storms, there is tissue damage, end organ damage, kidney damage, heart damage. Now there is a hematological understanding has come up very, very strongly. So there is alveolar damage, there is vascular damage, all this damage, and then it goes into the acute respiratory distress kind of a syndrome or ARDS, which can eventually lead to death. In between, there is oxygen criticality that comes in, and so many. Now tell me, in all this, in which stage allopathy will come in and in which stage Ayush can come in? We know precisely that in phase 1, in preventive stage, allopathy cannot do anything. Tell me what allopathy can do to prevent. We don't have vaccine. What can you do? Now, our group has worked on ashwagandha for last 25 years, and I can give you the whole data. We have shown in controlled studies that ashwagandha has selective Th1 upregulation activity. Now, if you have an agent which can selectively upregulate Th1 response, now that is going to prevent the disease in the early stage. Now, if we know that the early receptors in your respiratory tract wherein the virus is sitting there for some time. Now, if that virus is sitting there for some time, if the gargle, simple sipping of hard Ayush Koth, hot Koth sipping actually has adverse effect on a virus, that you don't require rocket science to prove that. You don't even need any evidence for that purpose. To show that maybe Yashti Madhu in upper respiratory tract is effective. What is wrong in it? It is not causing any harm to you. Definitely, it is part of your own kitchen remedy. So sipping hot Koth itself gives you a very, very strong chance of reducing the viral load that is likely to progress from one side to the other side. This is the story of progression. And in the progression at every stage, you can do something. Like physiological mask, the ashwagandha and guduchi can work actually as a physiological mask, or a steam for that matter, or neti. Neti is such a fantastic way to prevent. These are all physiological masks. The physical masks are important, and we are not undermining that at all. But in addition to physical masks, if physiological masks are also working, what is wrong in taking that if they are not harmful? When you are pushing hydroxychloroquine, which we know that in patients with cardiac conditions is questionable use, why can't you push our own medicines, ashwagandha or guduchi? If we would have done that 4 months ago, we would have got a global drug today ready. We are doing those clinical studies now, but it will take some time for results to come in. If we would have started that in time, in April, today our results would have been ready. And I'm saying that our drugs may fail. It doesn't matter. But stopping also doing clinical trials on our own medicine, how this kind of a mindset can be accepted in Naya Bharat? Tell me. I am not telling you that when person is on ventilator, when person wants oxygen, put them on some yoga. I am telling you that if initially with pranayama and with neti and with other conditions, if your immune system you are able to strengthen, what is wrong in doing that? But simply not understanding and accepting these things also, I think it's bizarre. It is not scientific. Not accepting anything of this kind is also not scientific, let me tell you. And to those who are asking where are the clinical trials, I want to ask them where are the clinical trials for the drugs which you are using in COVID-19. And I will go a step further and ask them that where are the clinical trials for something like, say, example, this is the example given by a British Medical Journal. And there was a very sarcastic clinical article written in British Medical Journal challenging every time this randomized controlled clinical trial and double-blind placebo-controlled clinical trial as evidence. They said that show us a evidence that parachutes save life. Show us evidence. Are you going to stop using parachute when they are needed just because there is no randomized controlled clinical trial? Or if you want to do randomized controlled clinical trial on parachutes, will you volunteer for that? No, these are the questions we as scientists should ask boldly. We should not be shy of doing that. At the same time, I must tell you that things are ruled by the market forces and we have to face that reality. So we know what is happening in the market. You all working in a psychiatric domain in which these forces are much more visible and much more has been written about them earlier. So we need not talk much about them. But at the same time, in our own country, stopping people or ridiculing people for those who are using to protect themselves from COVID-19, I think is not right, is not scientific. So at preventive stage, at early stage, at mild stage, definitely Ayurveda and Yoga, Unani, Siddha, all those traditional remedies can contribute. People should use that. Minister of Ayush has given a protocol, which is now protocol of main part, not Ayush protocol. This protocol is a protocol of main health protocol of Government of India. So we should use that. And those who are criticizing, they should come out with reason why they are criticizing and not just politically or emotionally criticize it. They should come out with evidence why they are saying so. At the same time, at the critical stages, when patients are at critical medicine, let the modern medicine take over fully, I'm saying. And let's not interfere with them by giving something because we don't know drug-drug reaction even today. So let's not insist on them that patients should continue to take ashwagandha or guduchi while they are taking antibiotics if the patient is facing complications or secondary infections. No. So let them handle that. Once they are recovered, once they are out of ICU or CCU, then again, during their recovery, to strengthen them, what is wrong in using yoga and Ayurveda or other systems of medicine? So there are slots, there are stages, and there are phases where each one can contribute. And I think as Integrative Medicine Center at NIMHANS, you have shown that path in your own discipline. Now people should follow the same path for other disciplines. The model remains same, that take best whatever is available without compromising science. That's it.
Thank you, sir. You ended with the Rigveda's Ano Badraha Krito Yantu Vishwataha. Thank you so much. Yes, sir, for a very enlightening and mainly motivating and inspiring talk on this. We would look forward for very active interaction with you, especially in the areas of network pharmacology and genomics, because we need those models and foundational aspects for our research that we are doing here. So certainly we will be bothering you for more such interactions with you.
One last thing I want to re-emphasize, one last thing, because I am seeing some questions coming in chat box. When I criticized RCTs for some purpose, I don't undermine them. Randomized control clinical trials are gold standard. There are no two ways about it. But their utility, in which condition and for what purpose, is to be judicially decided. They cannot be used uniformly for the same purpose. It will depend on what purpose you are. What is your research question? That will tell us which model you are using. And over and above all this, the world is now adopting pragmatic way to look at clinical trials. So pragmatic clinical trials are taking over, and RCTs have their own place. Wherever they are required, we will definitely use them, but it is not that they are the only answer. That's what my point was. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your enlightening talk. I hope all of us enjoyed Dr. Patwardhan's talk today, especially on National Ayurveda Day. Yeah, to give a brief background of National Ayurveda Day, it falls on Dhan Trayodashi of Ashvayuja Krishna Paksha, which is generally celebrated as Dhanvantari Jayanti, and Dhanteras is the name which has been derived from this Dhanvantari Jayanti. So Dhanvantari is considered to be the preceptor or the lord of Ayurveda, and the whole of medical community celebrates Dhanvantari Jayanti. And 5 years ago, Government of India declared this day as National Ayurveda Day, and after declaration, this is the 5th National Ayurveda Day, and the whole of the country is celebrating National Ayurveda Day. Even Prime Minister is dedicating to prestigious institutes to the country today on this occasion. And we, after starting off our department, this is the first National Ayurveda Day that we are celebrating at NIMHANS, inspired by a lot of people, including you, sir. Then on this occasion, we had organized a small painting competition to the children of the staff of NIMHANS. As you know, NIMHANS has a huge staff base. I'll just show you the prize winners, and I will announce the prizes. Hope the yes. So we had Sanjeevini, and we have nice, things by the Tiny Tots. Below 10 years, the first prize goes to Namana, who's 8-year-old. She has the topic was My Herbal Garden and Ayurveda, and we had not given them any hints, and this is what emerged from their thinking and guidance, maybe from the parents. Second prize goes to Hasini, who has tried to picturize a herbal garden using the kitchen based spices. And about 10 years, that is 10 to 15 years, the first prize goes to Deepika. The very beautiful painting where she has actually tried to identify different herbs which are used. Second prize also goes second prize goes to Shraddha, 10-year-old, and the way she has conceived a practitioner of Ayurveda. And the third prize goes to Rohan, 12 years, who has also very beautifully conceived a concept, and that's how he has put in this painting. So I congratulate on behalf of NIMHANS and behalf of everyone here to the prize winners. And as Dr. Shivram sir was mentioning, this prizes will be given to people, to all the winners during a physical ceremony that we are going to organize shortly. So thank you so much for participating in the painting competition. Now, yes, sir. It was very inspiring talk. We would be looking forward for more interactions with you. And Gangadhar sir has also conveyed, he has just called. He conveyed his regrets for not joining. He also conveys his best wishes and also his regards to you. Apart from Yes, sir. Apart from you, we have many people from NIMHANS and out of NIMHANS campus who have joined. I would also thank Dr. Malla Bhaskar Rao, Dr. Arti, and other stalwarts who have joined this meeting and participated actively. Thank you very much, sir. I thank everyone for joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I congratulate all the winners. I congratulate especially their parents and teachers, you know, these young children who have done Namana, Hasini, Deepika, Shamana and Rohan, you know, they have done a fantastic job. And this is how institutions should do, you know. So you are taking that to young minds. This is a great service. Wish you all the best. Dhanvantari Day is a very nice for me to interact with all of you. Namaskar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaskar.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.